"I'm sorry, sir, but I need to see your boarding pass again," the gate agent said with thinly veiled suspicion. Her eyes narrowed as she examined the premium ticket. "First-class boarding is for our first-class passengers only." Marcus Richardson stood perfectly still, his tailored navy suit impeccable despite the long day of meetings. He extended his boarding pass again, his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened slightly. "I am a first-class passenger, seat 3A. The gate agent frowned, examining the ticket as though searching for evidence of forgery. "One moment, please," she said, turning to her colleague and whispering something Marcus couldn't quite hear. The second agent glanced at him, eyebrows raised, then picked up a phone. Meanwhile, other passengers, primarily white businessmen in suits no finer than Marcus's, continued boarding through the first-class lane without a second glance from the staff. This wasn't Marcus's first encounter with this particular form of discrimination, but today it would be his last. What the airline staff didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine as they made him wait while other passengers boarded, was that Marcus Richardson wasn't just any business traveler. Behind his patient expression, a storm was brewing. And within 30 minutes, it would break with enough force to bring an entire airline to its knees. The gate agent returned, her colleague hovering nearby with arms crossed. "Sir, do you have additional identification? There seems to be some irregularity with your boarding pass." Marcus reached for his wallet, retrieving his driver's license and platinum credit card. "I've never been asked for additional ID at the gate before," he noted calmly. "My boarding pass has already been verified at security." The agent ignored his comment, scrutinizing his ID with the same suspicion. "And do you have a business card? We need to verify your eligibility for this fare class." That was the moment, the request that crossed the line from implicit bias to explicit discrimination. Marcus produced a business card from his inner jacket pocket, placing it atop his license. "I believe this should address any concerns about my eligibility." The agent's eyes widened as she read the card. "Marcus Richardson, Chief Executive Officer, Horizon Technologies. The $4.2 billion technology firm that had revolutionized cloud security over the past decade." Her colleague leaned over, eyes similarly widening. But it was too late. The damage was done. "I see," the agent stammered. "You're all set, Mr. Richardson. Have a pleasant flight." But Marcus didn't move. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," he said quietly. "Now, have you ever experienced discrimination while traveling? The unfair treatment that makes you question whether your money is somehow less valuable than someone else's? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe everyone deserves equal treatment regardless of their appearance, hit that subscribe button right now. Type respect in the comments and tell us where you're watching from, because this story of justice is just getting started. So who exactly is Marcus Richardson? And how did he become powerful enough to bring one of America's largest airlines to a standstill? Marcus's journey to becoming a tech industry titan began in humble circumstances. Raised by a single mother who worked as a nurse in South Chicago, Marcus showed exceptional aptitude for mathematics and computer science from an early age. Though his public school lacked resources, a dedicated teacher recognized his talent and encouraged him to apply for a scholarship program sponsored by MIT. Against overwhelming odds, Marcus was accepted, becoming the first in his family to attend college. College wasn't easy. While his classmates had attended prestigious prep schools and had been coding since childhood, Marcus was playing catch-up. He worked nights as a security guard to supplement his scholarship, sleeping just 4 hours between shifts and classes. His worn laptop was 3 generations behind what his peers used, but Marcus maximized every resource available to him. In the university's computer labs, he would often be the last to leave, sometimes staying until the early hours of the morning to complete projects his classmates finished hours earlier on their superior equipment. During his sophomore year, a particularly demanding programming assignment pushed many students to their limits. While others complained, Marcus approached it differently. He developed an innovative solution that not only met the requirements but improved upon them. His professor, Dr. Aronson, was so impressed that he introduced Marcus to several colleagues in the cybersecurity field. This young man, Dr. Aronson told them, doesn't just solve problems, he transforms them. Those connections proved invaluable. By his junior year, Marcus had secured an internship at DataGuard, a mid-sized security firm in Boston. While other interns were assigned routine tasks, Marcus identified a vulnerability in the company's client side. Encryption protocol. Instead of simply reporting it, he developed a patch that strengthened the entire system. By the time he graduated with honors, DataGuard had already offered him a full-time position. At DataGuard, Marcus quickly distinguished himself through his innovative thinking and tireless work ethic. Where others saw insurmountable security challenges, he saw opportunities for groundbreaking solutions. By 30, he had patented 3 security protocols that would become industry standards, earning him recognition throughout the tech world. But Marcus grew increasingly frustrated with corporate bureaucracy that slowed the implementation of his ideas. Security can't wait for committee approvals, he often said. By the time everyone agrees on the solution, the threat has already evolved. This philosophy led him to a pivotal decision at 35. Launching Horizon Technologies with 2 trusted colleagues and a modest first-round investment of $2.7 million. The early days of Horizon were challenging. Operating from a converted warehouse space with salvaged equipment, the small team competed against established giants with massive resources. Marcus worked 18-hour days, personally handling everything from coding to client pitches. His breakthrough came when a major bank experienced a devastating data breach that existing security providers couldn't address. Marcus and his team worked around the clock for 72 hours, developing a solution that not only contained the breach, but established new parameters for financial data security. Word spread quickly. Within 3 years, Horizon Technologies had secured contracts with 12 Fortune 500 companies. By year 5, they'd moved into a state-of-the-art facility and expanded to over 200 employees. Marcus insisted on building a diverse workforce from the beginning, establishing scholarship programs for underrepresented students and apprenticeships for those without traditional tech backgrounds. Innovation doesn't come from homogeneity, he often reminded his HR team. We need different perspectives to see beyond conventional solutions. 15 years after its founding, Horizon Technologies had become an industry powerhouse, employing over 3,000 people across 4 continents. Their security systems protected everything from banking transactions to healthcare records to, ironically, airline operations. The company Marcus built from nothing now safeguarded the data of over 70% of Fortune 500 companies, including Trans-American Airways, the very airline whose employee was now scrutinizing his credentials as though he couldn't possibly belong in first class. The irony wasn't lost on Marcus as he stood waiting for the supervisor. The same airline that wouldn't seat him in first class without extra verification depended on his company's technology to keep their most sensitive systems secure. In fact, just 3 months earlier, Marcus had personally approved a contract renewal that provided Transamerican with Horizon's latest security infrastructure, a $37 million investment that protected everything from their reservation systems to their maintenance records. Airport Supervisor Timothy Wells approached with the practiced smile of someone accustomed to diffusing situations. His expression was a careful blend of authority and appeasement, his walk brisk but not rushed. "Mr. Richardson," he began, emphasizing the title with newfound respect, "I understand there's been some confusion with your boarding." The way he stressed Mr. Richardson made it clear he now understood exactly who Marcus was. "I apologize for any inconvenience. Of course, you're welcome to board immediately." "The issue isn't about boarding now," Marcus replied evenly, his voice carrying just enough for nearby passengers to hear. "It's about why I was singled out for additional verification when none of the other first-class passengers were." He gestured toward the line where several white travelers had continued boarding. Without incident during his detention, several travelers had stopped to watch the interaction, some recording with their phones, sensing something significant was unfolding. A young woman in business attire nodded slightly, as though she'd witnessed this scenario before. Timothy lowered, his voice leaning in slightly. "Sir, I assure you this was just standard procedure. Perhaps a misunderstanding." His smile remained fixed, though his eyes darted briefly to the recording phones. "Our agents are trained to verify any boarding pass that raises concerns." "And what concerns did my boarding pass raise?" Marcus asked, maintaining his composure. "Was it printed differently? Was there a security flag on my reservation?" He knew the answers already. His boarding pass was identical to every other first-class passenger's. There had been no system flags. The only difference was the person holding it. Well, sometimes our system requires additional verification for certain—" Timothy stumbled, searching for a justification that wouldn't explicitly acknowledge the discrimination. "For certain passengers?" Marcus finished for him. "I've flown first class on over 200 flights in the past 5 years. This has happened on 74% of them, but only on Transamerican. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a pattern." His voice remained measured, but there was steel behind every word. The numbers weren't an exaggeration. Marcus had documented every incident, a habit formed from years of having his experiences dismissed. Timothy's smile faltered, replaced by a look of discomfort. "Sir, I apologize if you feel you've been treated unfairly," Marcus interrupted, his patience waning. "I don't feel I've been treated unfairly. I have been treated unfairly, and I suspect I'm not the only one." He gestured to the first class lane where another black traveler was now being asked for additional documentation while white passengers continued boarding unimpeded. The second traveler, an older gentleman in a well-cut gray suit, showed visible resignation as he produced additional identification. The weariness of someone who had experienced this discrimination so often it had become routine. "This stops today." Marcus reached for his phone, stepping away from the gate. The supervisor called after him, concern now replacing his diplomatic tone. "Sir, your flight is boarding. You'll miss your departure. There was an unspoken question in his voice. Surely you wouldn't miss an important flight over something so routine? Marcus turned back with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. I suspect that will be the least of Transamerican's concerns in about 20 minutes. The first call went to Julian Mercer, Horizon's Chief Operations Officer and Marcus's right hand for over a decade. They had met during Marcus's DataGuard days, recognizing in each other a shared commitment to excellence and integrity. Julian had been the first person Marcus approached when founding Horizon, and his operational brilliance had been instrumental in transforming Marcus's technical vision into a functioning company. Julian, initiate Protocol Echo. There was a brief pause on the other end. In the background, Marcus could hear the ambient sounds of Horizon's operations center. Quiet conversations, keyboard clicks, the subtle hum of high-performance servers. "You're certain?" Julian asked, his tone shifting immediately to alert readiness. Protocol Echo wasn't a dramatic phrase invented for effect. It was a carefully planned response to discrimination, developed years earlier after Marcus had faced similar treatment from a potential client who later desperately needed Horizon's services. The protocol had been refined over time, but never actually deployed. Until now. Completely certain, Marcus confirmed, watching as the flight continued. Boarding without him. And contact legal. I want them ready for immediate action. Julian's response was immediate. Understood. Timeline? Start the clock now. Full implementation in 15 minutes. The second call went to Sophia Washington, Horizon's Chief of Public Relations. A former journalist with decades of media experience, Sophia had joined Horizon 5 years earlier, drawn by the company's ethical stance as much as its success. She had restructured their entire communication strategy, positioning Horizon not just as a security provider, but as a thought leader in corporate responsibility. Sophia, we're implementing Protocol Echo against Transamerican Airways. I need you to prepare a statement and contact our media partners. Direct, specific, no room for misinterpretation, exactly how Marcus ran his company. Sophia didn't hesitate. Understood. Location? Her voice was already in professional mode, assessing what information she would need. LaGuardia Terminal C. I'm about to miss Flight 2467 to San Francisco because I'm apparently not first-class material. There was the slightest edge to his voice now, the only indication of the anger he felt. Sophia's typing was audible in the background. She was already drafting the statement. Documentation? Multiple witnesses, security footage, and I'm sure it's being recorded by at least a dozen passengers right now. Marcus glanced around, confirming his assessment. At least 15 people had phones raised, capturing the unfolding situation. Timeline for release? Coordinate with Julian. Statement goes live concurrent with protocol activation. Marcus's third call was the one that would change everything. He stepped further away from the gate, ensuring privacy for this most crucial conversation. Diane, it's Marcus. I need you to convene an emergency board meeting. His tone was grave, but controlled. Diane Chen, chairperson of Horizon Technologies Board of Directors and one of the company's earliest investors, recognized the gravity in Marcus's voice immediately. Unlike many board chairs who maintained distance from day-to-day operations, Diane had always been deeply engaged with Horizon's ethical framework. What's happened? Her question was direct, trusting Marcus's judgment. Trans-American Airways has a discrimination problem, and as of right now, they have a much bigger problem with their operational security systems. Marcus watched as the final first-class passengers boarded, the gate agent deliberately avoiding eye contact with him. Diane understood immediately. The service contract. Exactly, Marcus confirmed. As of this moment, I want all services to Trans-American Airways suspended under the ethics violation clause, and I want our shares in their parent company liquidated. All of them. It was a bold move. Horizon had gradually acquired nearly 8% of Trans-American's parent company over the past 3 years, a strategic investment that now gave them significant leverage. That's over $200 million in holdings, Diane noted, not as an objection, but as a confirmation of the magnitude. I'm aware, Marcus replied, and I'm prepared to justify it to the board and shareholders. This isn't an impulsive decision, Diane. You know how long we've been documenting these incidents. There was a brief silence as Diane considered. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of decision. I'll have the board assembled virtually within the hour. In the meantime, you have my proxy for the initial action. Do what needs to be done. What would you do if you were in Marcus's position? Would you walk away to catch your flight, or would you use your power to demand accountability? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button now to see more stories of justice in action. Back at the gate, confusion was spreading like wildfire. Gate agents stared at suddenly frozen computer screens. The boarding process for Flight 2467 had ground to a halt. Passengers crowded around the desk, demanding explanations that the increasingly distressed staff couldn't provide. The system is just down, one agent explained helplessly, repeatedly clicking on her keyboard as though that might resolve the issue. We can't access any passenger information or boarding records. What about those who've already boarded? An elderly passenger asked, concern evident in her voice. We can't. The agent looked to her colleagues for help, finding only mirrored confusion. We can't even see who's on the aircraft right now. What they didn't yet know was that this was just the beginning. Throughout Terminal C, the effects were rapidly becoming apparent. Digital display boards flickered momentarily before displaying system error messages. Self-check-in kiosks went dark. At baggage drop stations, conveyor belts stuttered to a halt mid-operation, leaving suitcases stranded. Airport-wide, Trans-American staff were discovering the same issue. The airline's entire digital infrastructure was collapsing in real time. Check-in systems, baggage tracking, flight planning, crew scheduling, all offline simultaneously. And it wasn't limited to LaGuardia. At the airline's operations center in Dallas, alerts began flooding in from airports across the country. Then from international hubs, London, Tokyo, Frankfurt, Sydney, every Trans-American Airways system that depended on Horizon Technologies' security infrastructure, which was essentially all of them, had gone offline simultaneously. Horizon hadn't disabled the systems directly. That would have created immediate safety concerns. Instead, Protocol Echo activated the most stringent security verification protocols simultaneously across all systems, effectively putting every digital asset into protected lockdown mode until multiple levels of authorization could be provided. It was like having every door in a building suddenly require special clearance to open, with no master key available. In the airline's primary data center, IT specialists scrambled to identify the source of the cascading failures. Emergency protocols designed for potential cyber attacks were initiated, but the usual remediation steps proved ineffective. This wasn't an attack from outside. It was a deliberate, controlled limitation of service from the very company responsible for the system's security. Marcus watched calmly from a seat near the gate, his phone buzzing constantly with updates. Other passengers glanced at him occasionally, unaware that the man sitting quietly with his tablet was the epicenter of the growing crisis. Timothy Wells, the supervisor who had dismissed his concerns minutes earlier, was now engaged in an increasingly panicked phone conversation with what appeared to be senior management. His face had drained of color as the magnitude of the situation became clear, his free hand tugging anxiously at his tie as though it had suddenly become too tight. "I don't know what triggered it," Timothy insisted to whoever was on the other end of the call. "Every system just started locking down simultaneously." He listened for a moment, then shook his head. "No, we can't even access basic passenger manifests. Nothing's working." As the chaos intensified, airline staff began implementing contingency measures, distributing paper boarding passes, manually checking IDs, attempting to coordinate via cell phones and personal devices. But the scale of disruption quickly overwhelmed these stopgap efforts. Without access to central systems, there was no way to know which flights had been properly boarded, which baggage had been correctly sorted, which crews were properly positioned. Trans-American executive Marcus didn't recognize Rush to the gate, surrounded by a group of agitated staff. The man's expensive suit and authoritative presence marked him as senior leadership, likely a regional director or vice president based on the deference shown by terminal staff. Through the growing chaos, Marcus overheard fragments of their conversation. "How can an entire system just shut down?" the executive demanded, his voice strained with controlled panic. "They're saying it's a security protocol activation," a tech specialist responded, scrolling frantically through her tablet. "What do you mean we can't override it?" the executive snapped back. "There has to be an emergency workaround." "Sir, it's not that simple. The security architecture is designed to prevent exactly that kind of override. It's a feature, not a bug." "Who designed this system? Who's responsible for it?" the executive demanded. "Horizon Technologies. They're our primary security provider." "Who the hell is Horizon Technologies?" Marcus stood, straightening his tie, and approached the group. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew exactly how this confrontation would unfold. "I can answer that last question," he said, his voice carrying clearly despite the surrounding chaos. The executive turned, irritation flashing across his face until recognition dawned in his eyes. The rapid shift in his expression might have been comical under different circumstances, from dismissive anger to shocked recognition in the span of a heartbeat. "You're Marcus Richardson." "I am," Marcus confirmed, extending his hand reflexively, the habit of business courtesy ingrained despite the circumstances. "CEO of Horizon Technologies, the company that provides the security infrastructure for your entire airline, or did, until approximately 11 minutes ago." The executive's expression transformed from confusion to horror as the implications set in. His hand fell limply to his side, ignoring Marcus's offered handshake. You did this? Do you have any idea the disruption you're causing?" "We have thousands of passengers." His voice rose with each word, drawing more attention from the surrounding crowd. Marcus raised a hand, silencing him with the quiet authority that had made him so effective in boardrooms around the world. I'm well aware. Just as I'm aware of the disruption caused. When your staff routinely subject passengers like myself to discriminatory treatment. The difference is, you now have a financial incentive to address the problem. By now, a crowd had gathered. Passengers, airline staff, even airport security. Personnel were watching the confrontation unfold. Many had their phones out, recording what would soon become one of the most viral corporate showdowns in recent memory. In the background, a security guard approached cautiously, uncertain whether to intervene in what appeared to be escalating into a public confrontation. The executive, whose name badge identified him as Robert Hargrove, Vice President of Eastern Operations, lowered his voice, attempting to regain control of the situation. He leaned in, speaking with forced calmness. Mr. Richardson, surely we can discuss this privately. Whatever your concerns, this response is disproportionate and potentially illegal. Marcus's calm never wavered. Actually, it's completely legal. Section 7.3 of our service agreement explicitly permits service suspension in cases of ethical violations, including discrimination against any person based on race, gender, religion, or other protected characteristics. My legal team documented 73 instances of such discrimination by Trans-American staff against passengers in the past year alone. Today makes 74. Hargrove paled further, the blood draining from his face as he processed this information. That can't be accurate. His denial lacked conviction. It is, Marcus assured him. And every instance is meticulously documented. Dates, times, locations, staff members involved, witness statements. While your airline was profiling passengers like me, my company was compiling evidence for precisely this moment. He gestured to the growing chaos around them. Your entire operational infrastructure will remain offline until Trans-American Airways takes concrete steps to address its discriminatory practices. My terms will be delivered to your board within the hour. Hargrove's professional demeanor cracked, revealing the panic beneath. Do you understand what you're doing? We have flights in the air right now, passengers stranded across the globe. Your flight operations systems are unaffected, Marcus clarified, his tone still measured. This isn't about endangering passengers. It's about accountability. And to be clear, this situation could end within minutes if Trans-American is willing to acknowledge its pattern of discrimination and commit to meaningful change. News of the unprecedented shutdown spread across social media faster than any airline could contain it. Passengers stranded at airports worldwide shared videos and updates in real time. The Trans-American shutdown and Richardson response were trending worldwide within hours. Citizen journalists captured footage of airline staff attempting to process passengers with handwritten boarding passes and manual baggage tags. Scenes reminiscent of air travel from decades past. Major news networks interrupted regular programming for breaking coverage of what commentators were calling the most consequential corporate accountability moment of the decade. Financial analysts scrambled to assess the impact on Trans-American's parent company, Global Air Holdings, whose stock had begun plummeting within minutes of the first reports. This is unprecedented, noted aviation industry analyst Elena Rodriguez on CNN's breaking news coverage. We've seen system outages before due to technical failures or cyber attacks, but never as a deliberate corporate action against discriminatory practices. Marcus Richardson has essentially created a new form of corporate activism. The impact was immediate and severe. Over 2,200 trans-American flights were grounded worldwide, unable to process passenger manifests or complete required security protocols. An estimated 143,000 passengers were stranded or delayed. Customer service lines stretched through terminals as harried staff attempted to manually rebook travelers or arrange alternative transportation. The airline's stock plummeted 27% in a single afternoon of trading, triggering circuit breakers and temporary trading halts. Analysts estimated the financial impact at approximately $4.8 million per hour, and the clock was ticking. By evening, Transamerican's CEO Brian Aldridge had emerged from emergency meetings to issue a statement promising a thorough investigation and immediate corrective action regarding the alleged discriminatory practices. What few realized amid the chaos was that Marcus Richardson had been preparing this response for years. The ethics violation clause in Horizon's service contract hadn't been standard boilerplate. It had been deliberately crafted after Marcus experienced similar discrimination early in his career. The provision had raised eyebrows among Transamerican's legal team when first proposed, but had ultimately been accepted as an unlikely theoretical scenario. Similarly, the documentation of discriminatory incidents wasn't coincidental. Horizon had been systematically tracking and categorizing such reports through customer feedback channels and social media monitoring. Marcus had personally funded an independent research study examining differential treatment of passengers based on perceived race, with Transamerican showing the highest disparity among major carriers. For Marcus, this wasn't merely about one denied boarding, one moment of humiliation. It was about creating consequences substantial enough to force systemic change in an industry that had long dismissed bias complaints as isolated incidents or subjective misinterpretations. As evening fell, Marcus remained at LaGuardia working from an airline club lounge whose staff had nervously welcomed him despite the circumstances. He conducted virtual meetings with Horizon's crisis team, approved the company's public statement, and fielded calls from board members concerned about potential backlash. Through it all, his resolve never wavered. "This isn't about revenge," he explained to his executive team during a video conference. "It's about establishing that discrimination has concrete costs. For too long, companies have calculated that the occasional settlement or apology is cheaper than systemic change. We're changing that equation." 24 hours after the systems went dark, Transamerican Airways executives and board members gathered for an emergency meeting at their corporate headquarters. Financial analysts estimated the airline had lost approximately $47 million in the first day alone. Customer trust was in free fall, with bookings for future travel down 64% compared to the previous week. Social media sentiment analysis showed public opinion overwhelmingly supporting Marcus's position, with hashtags like "Fly Without Bias" and "You Boycott Transamerican" gaining traction. The airline's options were severely limited. Attempting to switch security providers would take months and cost hundreds of millions in transition costs, even assuming another provider could be found willing to step into such a volatile situation. Legal action against Horizon would be complicated by the clear language in their service agreement, language Transamerican's own legal team had approved years earlier, never imagining it would be invoked so dramatically. Inside the boardroom, tensions ran high as executives debated their limited options. "We could sue for breach of contract," suggested Transamerican's chief legal officer, though her tone lacked conviction. "Based on what grounds?" countered another executive. The contract explicitly permits them to suspend service in cases of ethical violations, and given the evidence they've compiled— "What evidence?" interrupted CEO Brian Aldridge. "These are just allegations." The chief legal officer slid a tablet across the table. "This arrived an hour ago. Their documentation of discriminatory incidents. It's comprehensive." Her expression communicated what she didn't say aloud. The evidence was damning. After reviewing the data in stunned silence, the board faced the unavoidable conclusion: fighting would only prolong the crisis and further damage the company. 3 days into the crisis, Brian Aldridge personally called Marcus Richardson, the strain of countless emergency meetings evident in his voice. "We're prepared to meet your terms," the airline CEO said, his tone a mixture of resignation and resentment. "All of them." Marcus's response was measured. "I'm glad to hear it. My team will be monitoring implementation closely. Any deviation from the agreed conditions will result in immediate resumption of the service suspension." The terms were comprehensive and public. Immediate termination of staff directly involved in discriminatory incidents, including gate agents and their supervisors. Mandatory anti-bias training for all trans-American employees, from executives to ground staff, to be conducted by independent diversity experts. Revision of all boarding and verification procedures to ensure consistent application, regardless of passenger demographics, with regular audits to verify compliance. Establishment of an independent oversight committee to monitor and report on Trans-American's progress, with quarterly public reports. Financial compensation to passengers documented as victims of discrimination, administered through a transparent claims process. A public acknowledgement of the airline's failings and commitment to improvement, to be delivered by the CEO personally. Implementation of anonymous testing procedures to identify and address ongoing discriminatory practices. Within hours of Trans-American's acceptance of these terms, Horizon Technologies restored partial system functionality, allowing the airline to begin addressing the massive backlog of cancelled flights. Full restoration would come incrementally over the following 48 hours, with each phase tied to specific commitments by the airline. The aftermath transformed not just Trans-American Airways but the entire airline industry. Other carriers, watching the crisis unfold, rushed to implement their own anti-discrimination initiatives, fearing similar consequences. United announced a comprehensive review of its boarding procedures. Delta established an independent oversight committee for discrimination complaints. American Airlines implemented mandatory anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff. Industry associations established new standards for equitable treatment of passengers, with certification programs and regular audits. Government regulatory agencies launched investigations into discriminatory practices across multiple airlines, with several announcing new reporting requirements and enforcement mechanisms. For Marcus Richardson, the incident solidified his reputation, not just as a brilliant technologist, but as an unapologetic advocate for equity in corporate America. In the weeks following the Trans-American shutdown, Horizon Technologies saw its stock price surge as customers and investors alike responded positively to the company's ethical stance. New client inquiries increased by 37%, with many specifically citing the company's values as a determining factor. Critics accused Marcus of corporate vigilantism, arguing that one CEO shouldn't have unilateral power to shut down critical infrastructure. But defenders pointed out that Trans-American had willingly signed a contract with clear ethical requirements, requirements the airline had repeatedly violated without consequence until forced to face the economic impact of their actions. 6. Months later, Marcus boarded another trans-American flight, again in first class. The difference was immediately apparent. The diverse gate staff greeted all passengers with the same respect and efficiency, regardless of appearance or background. The boarding process proceeded without the discriminatory additional verification that had once been routine for passengers of color. As he settled into his seat, Marcus noted the small placard now displayed in every seat pocket. Trans-American Airways is committed to equitable treatment of all passengers, without exception. If you experience or witness any form of discrimination, please report it immediately. A QR code linked to an independent reporting system that bypassed the airline's internal complaint process, ensuring accountability. It was a small change, but it represented something much bigger. Proof that when power is wielded purposefully, systems can change. Sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to accept discrimination, one leader willing to use their influence to demand accountability. The flight attendant approached with a pre-departure beverage. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Richardson," she said, her smile genuine. "It's an honor to have you flying with us." As Trans-American Flight 892 took off, Marcus Richardson looked out the window at the sprawling airport below, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the South Chicago neighborhood where he'd grown up to the boardrooms where he now helped shape industry policy, his path had never been easy. But he had transformed each obstacle into an opportunity, each instance of discrimination into a catalyst for change. The transformation of Trans-American Airways wouldn't erase decades of discriminatory practices in the airline industry overnight. But it had created a template for accountability that would reverberate for years to come. And it had started with a single moment of injustice, a CEO denied boarding, and the courageous decision to say, "Enough." If this story inspired you, like, and hit that subscribe button right now. And remember, real change happens when people with power use it to lift others up. Share this video so others can learn too.